So the next stage of the picture is to put the river in. And for this I've mixed 3 colours to match the sky exactly. And I'm starting with a number 10 brush with horizontal strokes, wetting the water area. I'm going to try and leave a very thin white, dry white line where the river meets the distance, and at the same time not smudge the base of the towers. Now I'm going to put quite sweeping horizontal strokes right across. I can ignore the boat because I've got masking fluid on it, so I can paint right through that. And I'm bringing the clear water right down to the foreground so it'll stay wet long enough for me to work on it. Like it's upside down, it's an upside down version of the sky, so where the pinky colour was at the bottom of the sky, this now goes at the top of the water, and we'll sweep that across, trying to leave that little glimpse of white paper. Nice rich horizontal strokes. Bring a little touch of it across the middle as well there. And then I'm picking up the blue, and we'll get some streaks of the blue in. It's nice if that mixes and merges on the paper with the Naples yellow and light red, just as it did in the sky. You've got to work horizontally on something like this. Whatever you do, it's got to look level. Bring more of that blue in right at the very front. I'm not worried at the moment about underneath the boats too much, because that will need a bit of work on to suggest reflection when the boats have been painted. And now I'm introducing the grey. Let's get a few streaks of the grey across the very front there. Breaking it up to give the suggestion of ripples in the water. You can use the very point of the brush for that. And now I'm swapping to the number 4 brush, got some more of that dark grey, and I'm just going to try and give the effect of some reflection underneath the towers. Just a little bit of that dark grey echoed in the water. Maybe I need to make that a bit stronger. Cobalt blue and light red. It's a fairly strong tone, that. Directly underneath where the tower meets the water. While I've got that on the brush, I can just suggest maybe 1 or 2 more ripples in the foreground. Well, it's still a bit soft, still a bit damp. I can get that soft broken effect. Trying to leave a little glimpse here and there of white as well. And we'll leave that to dry. Well, as soon as the water had dried on the river, I've removed the masking fluid from the boats, and we'll now mix some colours for them. I've got a number 8 brush, plenty of water on it, and I'm going to start by mixing a grey for this metal cabin on the largest of the 2 boats. And I've got cerulean blue, to which I'm adding a bit of rose madder. And I'm going to paint that over the whole of this cabin area. Now that will need some shadow on it when it's dry, but while it's drying I can work on the hull of the boat. So I'm going to, and that's quite dark, it's almost a black, but not quite. So I'm going to start with some burnt sienna, still with the number 8 brush, and I'm going to add to that some ultramarine blue, taking it to almost a black, but not quite. I still want a hint of warmth coming through from the burnt sienna. And then it's the hull of the larger boat. Being careful to paint round the shape of the awning on the smaller boat, leaving that as white paper for later on. And as I bring that down to meet the water, I'm just going to take a damp clean brush and soften it at that point, so that later on, probably the final stage of the picture, will be to soften this into some suggestions of reflections. But I'm just going to dampen it for now with a damp, clean brush. So now that that's dry, I've got a number 4 brush, and I'm just going to mix a bit of shadow colour with some cobalt blue and a touch of light red, and paint that along the left-hand side of this cabin area. And while I've got that mixed, we'll put a line across the top, a little bit of detailing, still with this number 4 brush. There are quite a few verticals in there which we can just dash in quickly, and I can carry on with that grey to the interior. Just gradually building up these areas, but I'm mindful all the time of at what stage I need to leave something to dry so that I don't get a soft area where I wanted a hard edge. And to get a bit more of that burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, and I'm adding a bit more ultramarine blue to make it greyer, and putting in more of the side of the boat, again leaving a space for the awning on that boat, that smaller boat in front of it. A little bit of dark down inside there. Right, we can carry on now to do some more work on the hull, putting a bit of shape in on the underside there, and a bit of more dark in that side, softening that round into the previous colour. I've got some burnt sienna with a little bit of light red, and we'll place this in at the front here, at the back as well. We'll look at the hull of the smaller boat. I've got cerulean blue again and light red. I think I need it a bit darker than that. We put some more pigment in, some more light red and more cerulean blue. Well, that will need developing with some more shadow once it's dry, but it just needs a few moments to dry. I'm going to work in a bit more shadow now. I've got some more ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. 1 or 2 areas that are fairly dark. It's a working boat, this. It's not particularly bright and colourful. So a bit more dark in there to emphasise that side. And then we'll put a bit of shadow under that lip there. And there's some supports. Darken a bit more into this section here. And this is more curved, so we don't want a hard line where that meets the previous colour. We want a soft edge, so I'm just taking a damp, clean brush and feathering it in to the previous colours. Now a bit more shadow onto the side of this one, bringing us to that corner there. Touch more shadow, I think, on this side. Make them look that bit more convincing. For the awning on the smaller boat, that bit of canvas, I want to introduce a new colour that's nowhere else in the picture to add a bit of interest to the foreground. So I've just squeezed out a bit of Viridian on the edge of the palette, and I'm going to use that with some cobalt blue to make a slightly greeny blue. And I'm going to paint this all the way. I'm going to try and leave a little hint of white along the top, just catching the light. And along that edge there, they should bring us right down to just leave the little bit of white that suggests the top of the hull. A bit more of the dark, really dark brown, the burnt sienna and ultramarine, just to get a little bit of dark along that edge there. And we can also use that to darken that green and put a few creases into the fabric. A touch more dark along there, and maybe a few more of these creases in the metalwork. I'm going to now get a very thin wash of cobalt blue just to reflect a bit of the sky colour on the roof of the cabin there. A little bit of cobalt blue to go round the top of the hull of this boat, and use that for a tint around this one. just to take that whiteness off. Still leaving it nice and light. And that just needs a few minutes to dry. So we need a few more details now just to finish off these boats. I've got some more dark brown with burnt sienna and ultramarine. And I'm just going to put a bit of dark in on the edge of the smaller boat. Which I can then carry on into the water to suggest ripples and broken reflections. Some of that blue-grey mixture from the hull of the small boat, that's cerulean blue and light red. And I'm just touching some more ripples into there, just more or less echoing the shape of the boat, but in broken marks. And the final touch is to get a smaller brush, a number 2. I've got some opaque white. Again, I like to use the opaque white straight out of the tube. I like to keep it well away from my palette. And I'm just going to dip the number 2 brush in the opaque white, put a bit of it on the edge of the paper and add a touch of burnt sienna to it to give it a bit of colour. And I'm going to just put a couple of ropes in and little hints of detail. Using the opaque quality of the white to make it stand out against the dark hull of the boats. And that's that completed. So to round up on this project, it's very important that we do make those distant buildings quite faint so they look a long way away. That method of just touching over them with a damp clean brush and then dabbing them with tissue really does help to create that effect. Also remember when you're painting the small details on the bridge itself, like the little windows and architectural detail, to make sure that you have got a brush with a really good fine point so you can be accurate. And finally, don't be afraid to use the ruler. It's not cheating because this isn't a natural object we're painting, it's a piece of engineering. And the ruler can help you to get the areas of the bridge that you need to really straight and tidy.
Now available to buy. Try these techniques at home whenever you wish. The extended version of today's workshop and the book that accompanies this series are now available to order from the Painting and Drawing channel. For further information and to order your copy, go to www.paintingdrawingchannel.com.